The video today will discuss FEMA's alarming forecast for food shortages by 2025, based on a detailed analysis of the most recent data and opinions from multiple experts. The video will scrutinize the origins and possible consequences of these challenges, along with the necessary preparation measures. First, economic instability has a significant impact on global food security. This is primarily because of rampant inflation and persistent disruptions in supply chains. The World Bank says that the COVID-19 pandemic and ongoing geopolitical conflicts, including the war in Ukraine, have led to a sharp rise in inflation rates. In more than 60% of countries, food inflation is now above 5%, increasing global food insecurity. The pandemic's economic ripple effects have increased production costs, including transportation and labor, resulting in higher food prices. These costs will continue to rise as economies struggle for stabilization. The conflict in Ukraine has exacerbated this problem. Ukraine and Russia export a lot of grain and fertilizer. The conflict has disrupted these exports, leading to global shortages and increased prices. These countries are having a difficult time maintaining their food supply chains. A disruption in the fertilizer supply in particular has a cascading impact on crop yields. This leads to higher prices for essential commodities like wheat and corn. Persistent logistic problems also cause supply chain disruptions. USDA reports indicate that these disruptions lead to sporadic supply shortages at grocery stores. The logistical challenges that exist are multifaceted, including bottlenecks in transportation, congestion at ports, and a lack of workers in key sectors such as trucking and warehouses. These disruptions can lead to shortages of basic foods and higher prices. Global economic slowdowns have reduced buying power in all areas. As many countries face recessionary pressures, consumers' ability to purchase essential goods, including food, has decreased. The economic pressure is especially severe in low-income nations, which already have high debt levels and a limited fiscal capacity. Trade policies and restrictions have further complicated the situation. Several countries have implemented export bans to safeguard their domestic food supplies. This has led to a reduction in availability and increased prices on the international market. It has resulted in a highly competitive market in which countries scramble for scarce resources, driving up prices. These trends, according to experts from the World Bank and other financial institutions, could result in even greater food shortages without international cooperation and significant policy interventions. We need a multifaceted approach to address economic instability, which includes stabilizing inflation, improving logistics infrastructure, and ensuring that trade policies are supportive rather than inhibiting. Geopolitical conflict can have a significant impact on global food production, distribution, and availability. This is especially true when it occurs in important agricultural areas. The war in Ukraine, for example, has had a severe impact on the global supply of sunflower oil and wheat. Ukraine, which is a major producer and exporter of these commodities, has seen its output drop due to the ongoing hostilities that directly impact global food security. This can fail. In addition to reducing crop production, this conflict has created significant logistical challenges that hinder the sale of these goods on international markets. Actions and trade restrictions placed on conflict-affected countries further strain the global food supply chain. The sanctions against Russia have limited its ability to export agricultural fertilizers and products, which are vital for the global food supply chain. The result has been higher prices and a reduced availability of these vital goods around the world. These sanctions disrupt normal trade flows, causing scarcity and increasing costs in the dependent regions. Conflicts can also result in the destruction of agricultural infrastructure and the displacement of farming communities. War-torn countries like Syria and Yemen have decimated local agriculture. This leads to long-term food security. In addition to reducing current food supplies, untended fields, damaged storage facilities, and damaged irrigation systems also hamper future agricultural recovery. Geopolitical tensions may also lead to hoarding and speculative trading on global markets in anticipation of further disruptions. Traders can stockpile commodities that are essential, which will drive up prices and exacerbate shortages. This kind of speculative behavior creates artificial scarcity and makes food unaffordable to many. Conflict zones restrict access to humanitarian aid, making it difficult to get food and other essential supplies to the affected population. Security risks and blockades pose significant obstacles to aid organizations, hindering the movement of humanitarian assistance. This leaves millions without access to nutrition and increases malnutrition rates. Geopolitical complexity often hampers international responses. These typically include emergency food assistance and economic support packages. Resolving conflicts requires diplomatic intervention in international efforts to find long-term solutions. Rebuild infrastructure and support sustainable agricultural techniques in affected regions. The interplay of war, economic sanctions, trade restrictions, and other factors creates an unstable environment for global food security. To restore and stabilize the food production and distribution system, multi-AC approaches involving immediate humanitarian aid and long-term development strategies are required. Inefficiencies and delays in transport and storage can increase spoilage and decrease fresh food availability, further compounding food security issues. Economic instability can also lead to currency devaluation and increase the price of imported goods, including food, agricultural inputs, and other commodities. The debt crisis in low-income countries exacerbates these problems. The high levels of debt in these countries limit their ability to import agricultural inputs and food, including seeds, fertilizers, and machinery, which are essential for maintaining agricultural productivity. Debt repayment obligations eat up a large part of national budgets. This leaves less money to invest in agriculture or address food shortages. Often, these countries must rely on international loans and aid, which may impose conditions that intensify economic strain. Global economic policies and fluctuations in the market also play an important role. For example, trade barriers and protective tariffs can limit the flow of agricultural and food products, leading to regional shortages and higher prices. In a downturn, countries may implement these measures in an attempt to protect their domestic markets, but they could unintentionally have adverse effects on the global food supply chain. A downturn in one area can have global repercussions due to the interconnectedness of the global economy. Reduced economic activity on major consumer markets such as the United States or Europe can result in a lower demand for exports by developing countries. This reduces their income and ability to purchase essential food supplies. It creates a negative feedback loop in which economic recession and food security reinforce each other. This leads to prolonged hardship for the affected population. According to FAO's Global Report on Food Crises, 258 million people will experience acute food insecurity by 2022. If current trends continue, we expect this alarming number to rise significantly. This could impact up to 300 million people by 2025. Multiple factors, including economic instabilities, climate change, and geopolitical conflict, drive this surge. Food production and distribution disruptions, combined with rising prices, increase the vulnerability of populations already at risk. In this scenario, economic inequality is a major factor. Food insecurity is a major problem for low-income countries that heavily depend on imported food. This is due to the economy's limited resilience and increased vulnerability to price changes. The World Bank states that these countries do not have the infrastructure or financial capacity to absorb shocks in the food supply chain. These countries experience the most severe disruptions in the food supply chain due to conflict, weather events, or economic downturns. This leads to severe shortages of food and higher malnutrition rates. Lack of social safety nets and limited government resources compound the problem of high debt levels and economic instability. These nations prioritize short-term economic concerns above long-term strategies for food security. These nations are ill-prepared to deal with future crises due to their short-term thinking. They also become dependent on international aid. In addition to an increase in hunger, the projected effects of food insecurity include broader socioeconomic implications. Food insecurity is a major contributor to increased migration, as people migrate in search of better conditions. This migration can put a strain on the resources of host communities and lead to tensions or conflict. Prolonged food insecurity can also cause long-term development setbacks, negatively impacting children's education and health, thereby undermining future economic growth. We need comprehensive strategies to address these issues, which include strengthening supply chains, enhancing economic resilience, and enhancing local food production. To provide the resources and expertise needed to create sustainable food systems, international cooperation and support are crucial. The focus of efforts must be on reducing inequality in the economy and providing lower-income countries with the resources to develop robust, self-sufficient strategies for food security. 5. Expert opinions and perspectives. The World Bank emphasizes the impact of inflation on global food security. After global economic turmoil, many countries are struggling with rising food prices. In some regions, the inflation rate has exceeded 5%. This inflation reduces the purchasing power of millions, rendering essential food items out of reach. Supply chain disruptions exacerbate these issues by impeding efficient food transportation and distribution. This leads to shortages and increased prices. The World Bank stresses the importance of international cooperation to tackle these economic disruptions. Food markets. The World Food Programme, WFP, highlights the compounded effect of conflict and economic instabilities on food security. Conflict zones are often characterized by severe food shortages as a result of the destruction of infrastructure and population displacement, along with the interruption of agricultural production. WFP urges immediate humanitarian aid to meet the urgent needs of affected populations, as well as long-term strategies that will rebuild and stabilize the food system without sustained international assistance. WFP warns millions could be at risk of severe food insecurity. Experts in various fields have stressed that economic inequality is a major factor in causing food insecurity. This is especially true in low-income countries. Because of their low economic resilience, these countries are more vulnerable to price fluctuations. The World Bank says that these countries are most vulnerable because they lack the financial and infrastructure capacity to mitigate disruptions in the food supply. The ongoing recession has also reduced purchasing power, particularly in regions with low incomes. The reduction in economic activity led to a decrease in demand for exports by developing countries. This reduced their income and their ability to purchase essential food supplies. Due to the interconnectedness of global markets, economic downturns can affect multiple regions. Sixth, strategies for preparation and mitigation. Personal preparedness is a must. Gather non-perishable items like canned goods, beans, and grains. A family can store these items for a long time and use them as food during famines. Store these items in a dry, cool place to prolong their shelf life. Home gardening can be a great way to reduce costs and provide a constant supply of fresh fruits and vegetables. Reliance on outside sources. Home gardeners not only provide food security, but also promote healthier eating habits because they have access to organic, fresh produce. It is important to support local agriculture in order to enhance community resilience. Local farming initiatives help to ensure a stable food supply in the area while also supporting the local economy. You can do this by buying at farmers markets, joining a community-supported agricultural (CSA) program, or advocating local government support for small-scale farms. Local food systems that are stronger can reduce the impact of economic instability and global supply chain disruptions. Another important strategy is to advocate for economic stability. It is important to support policies that aim to stabilize the economy while reducing inflation. Economic stability can address the root cause of food shortages by ensuring food prices are affordable and supply chain functions remain functional. It is important to advocate for fiscal and monetary policies that support global economic growth and stability. We must increase international cooperation and aid. We must promote increased international cooperation in order to help vulnerable populations and stabilize the global food supply. Supporting international organizations that provide aid to vulnerable populations and working with global partners to tackle the root causes of hunger, such as conflict or economic instability, can be part of this. It is important to promote sustainable agricultural practices. Crop rotation, conservation of soil, and organic farming are all sustainable farming techniques that can increase soil health, improve climate resilience, and provide long-term food safety. Encouraging these practices will help agricultural systems withstand environmental and economic changes. This will ensure a stable future food supply.